What is the worst experience you have ever had with your neighbor? I lived in a really old fourplex, one of those buildings with creaky wood floors and thin walls, the kind that make you hear everything that goes on around you. My apartment was on the second floor, and the guy below me was already someone I dreaded having as a neighbor. The floors in my unit squeaked terribly when I moved around, even if I was being careful. It wasn't like I was stomping or jumping, just walking normally. But the noise traveled through the ceiling into his apartment. From early on, the guy was convinced I was deliberately stomping and making his life miserable. It started with occasional banging on my door, complaints shouted through the floor, and escalated quickly. He would come upstairs at all hours, banging so hard on my door it felt like it might break off its hinges, yelling at me to stop moving around. At first, I tried to be patient. I felt bad for him, honestly. He seemed genuinely frustrated and angry, but I couldn't make him understand or believe that I wasn't stomping or slamming my feet. I tried explaining that the floors were old and the squeaks were just part of the building's structure. It didn't matter. Every creak was a reason for another confrontation. I called my landlord multiple times, begging him for help. I explained the situation in detail, telling him the constant harassment was unbearable. My lease was locked in, so moving wasn't an option. The landlord's only advice? Buy a lot of rugs. So I did. I spent what little extra money I had on area rugs, carpets, and floor mats, trying to deaden the sound as much as possible. I rearranged my furniture to cover squeaky spots and even tried walking on the balls of my feet at times, anything to reduce the noise. But none of it stopped the neighbor from showing up to yell. The situation wore me down mentally and physically. I stopped moving freely around my own apartment. I tiptoed. I hopped from the couch to the chair just to cross a room without making noise. If I needed to get up from the living room, I'd calculate a quiet path, hoping to avoid triggering another outburst. It felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. One day, I realized I had to confront this directly. I needed to talk to him calmly, face to face. Maybe if I looked him in the eye and explained how I wasn't stomping or trying to be loud, he might finally understand. I wanted to clear the air before things got worse. I went downstairs and knocked on his door, trying to be polite and collected. I explained the situation patiently, telling him that I was doing everything I could, including buying rugs and changing how I moved, but the noise was part of the old building. I hoped he would see I wasn't being careless or disrespectful. At first he listened. His expression softened slightly, and I thought maybe there was hope. But then, his demeanor shifted. He looked at me coldly and said, "I'm about at the point that if it happens again, I'm going to show up at your door with a really big knife." He just stared at me after saying that, and I froze. The threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. I didn't argue, didn't respond. I turned and left as quickly as I could, heart pounding, head racing. Back upstairs, I called my landlord immediately and told him what had happened, that I was essentially being threatened by the guy downstairs. The landlord finally seemed to take it seriously, and a month later the neighbor moved out. Even after he left, I didn't stay long. The damage was done. I was constantly on edge in that apartment, and no amount of rugs or quiet footsteps could fix the fear and frustration I felt. As soon as my lease allowed, I moved out. Looking back, it was one of the worst living experiences I've had. Being unable to feel safe and comfortable in my own home because of a neighbor's anger and threats was exhausting and scary. The whole situation was just really shitty.